Title The Cause of All Causes, and verse 36. For that, we chant the invocation. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Yasye havaya lokan kalpayanti manishinaha katya adhivirada sapta saptordvam jaganadibi yasye havaya lokan kalpayanti manishinaha katya adibirada sapta saptordvam jaganadibi yasye hava yavairlokan kalpayanti manishinaha katya adibirada sapta saptordvam jaganadibi Word for word. Yasya, whose, iha, in the universe, avayavai, by the limbs of the body, lokan, all the planets, kalpayanti, imagine, manishinaha, great philosophers, kati adibi, down from the waist, adaha, downwards, sapta, 7 systems, sapta urdham, and 7 systems upwards, jaganadibi, front portion. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki. Great philosophers imagine that the complete planetary systems in the universe are displays of the different upper and lower limbs of the universal body of the Lord. The word kalpayanti, or imagine, is significant. The Virat universal form of the Absolute is an imagination of the speculative philosophers who are unable to adjust to the eternal two-handed form of Lord Sri Krishna. Although the universal form, as imagined by the great philosophers, is one of the features of the Lord, it is more or less imaginary. It is said that the 7 upper planetary systems are situated above the waist of the universal form, whereas the lower planetary systems are situated below his waist. The idea impressed herein is that the Supreme Lord is conscious of every part of his body, and nowhere in the creation is there anything beyond his control. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Shri Radhanatan Vitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Shute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha kalpa tirubhascha kripa sindhu bhaivacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. So I couldn't have been in a more fortunate position. Right in front of me are Jagannath, Baldev, Subhadra, and they are in their lake. And all across I see Jagannath Puri, a replica of Jagannath Puri which has come from Jagannath Puri. So I'm reminded, my conditioned mind is being drawn by the mercy of the devotees to think of Jagannath, nothing greater to ask for. So in this purport, I'll read the translation again. Great philosophers imagine that the complete planetary systems in the universe are displays of the different upper and lower limbs of the universal body of the Lord. So as I was reading this, I was thinking, who are these great philosophers who think like that? And obviously we understand that the universal form that's being depicted here is actually a conceptualization. If there are many traditions. So basically, in very simple words, what these philosophers are actually wanting to accomplish is divinity in matter, to see divinity in matter. And you see other traditions, like in Australia itself, you have the Aboriginals who think the mountain to be a certain aspect of the Lord. And as we see in previous chapter, in Canto 2, where we see how the mountains are like, the backbone of the Lord, how the different rivers are like the water flowing through the veins of the Lord, and so on and so forth. There's elaborate description given in the previous chapter. So there are these philosophers, and now what I would want to discuss here is basically the beauty of Krishna's creation and how Krishna is conscious of everything in his creation and how there's nothing outside of Krishna's domain, as we understand. And he is beautifully described in the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, verse 7. Mattam. So I have it right here. Yep. Matta parataram nanyat kinchit asti dhananjaya. Mai sarvam idam protam sutre mani gani iva. O conqueror, well, there is no truth superior to me. Everything rests on me as pearls strung on a thread. Now, when I first heard this analogy, when I was doing Bhakti Shastri, the Prabhu he focused on this verse and he asked all of us, what's most striking of this verse? And he said, most importantly, about this analogy of everything rests upon me, just as pearls are strung on a thread. And he asked each and one of us, how, what's something that's you can miss in this if you don't pay attention. And each one of us came up with something, how each pearl is so, each pearl completes the beauty of this necklace or whatever it is. And so many people gave so many good, devotees gave good answers. He said, no, what you're realizing is that the thread on this pearl, on this necklace, is actually invisible. It's not visible to our eyes. That means Krishna permeates everything, and Krishna manages this whole universal affair. So if you don't want to see him, you won't see him. That's how wonderfully and dexterously Krishna has arranged this whole creation, this whole material manifestation. So, if we read the 10th canto, chapter 87, and which is titled Prayers of the Personified Vedas, in that King Parikshit asks Sukadev Goswami, how can the Vedas describe Brahman? Because the Vedas primarily deal with the three modes of nature, and Brahman is beyond the modes of nature. So how do the Vedas deal with it? So when we think of, people not understanding after reading different Vedic texts, don't worry, it was happening even at King Parikshit asked this question for us, and he inquired on our behalf. So he asked this question, how do the Vedas deal with the subject matter of the absolute truth? Who actually is beyond the modes of nature, and how do we understand him? And the answer that Shukadev Goswami gives is actually quite, I would say, not unprecedented, but it's something that you would think is not relevant. The answer that he gives is, and I have it here, where he says the supreme, and this answer is, so the first question is how do the Vedas deal with it, and then the second verse in the same chapter, it is said, the Supreme Lord manifested the material intelligence, senses, mind, and vital air so that they could indulge in sense gratification, so that the jivas that are laying dormant. So now one may ask, what does this answer have to do with the question, that how do the Vedas deal with it? And further on in the purport, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur elaborates that this is something, when a question is asked in an indirect way, the answer that's given is also indirect, just to, create a sense of, further inquisitiveness that's been given. So he says, now, if you think about it, if the Lord provides mind, intelligence, and senses, that means it's actually coming from a person. These are personal attributes. And it goes on to further expand that, for example, if the Lord weren't to give these faculties to us, the faculties of perceiving things, we wouldn't be able to experience that that sense perception and be able to describe it to others. For example, if there's a child who's been born deaf, dumb, and blind, so that person wouldn't be able to ever experience how, what is the perception of sound, what is the perception of sight, so on and so forth. So the Lord, out of His kindness, out of His mercy, gives us these facilities, which alludes to that the Lord is actually a person. So now one may, sometimes we quite often, again, everything is dependent on the mercy of the Lord. I remember this one instance when I was living in Houston, and the temple there, when I started frequenting it quite a regular basis, I came across this one couple who had actually been coming to that same coming to temple for about 20 years, from what she told me. And I was like, wow, I've just been coming for a year, and you've been coming for 20 years. How lucky you are. And then further on, a couple of Sunday feasts later, it's usually said when people start speaking, you get to see their real side. So, Mataji, this lady was there with the two boys, and the Prabhu, the husband, wasn't there. And I asked this Mataji, where's Prabhu today? And she said, he's writing books. I said, okay, books? And I knew he was an optometrist. I said, books on, you mean ophthalmology? No, books on Hinduism. Oh, okay. Like what? Oh, Shiva, Ganesh, Vishnu, they're all one, how we should all worship them. And I just closed my ears and I'm like, okay. And then I just ran away from there. I didn't run away at that time, but I left her association at the first available moment. And further I inquired that from other devotees, like, they've been coming to the temple for 20 years, and is it just me who feels that they haven't had it right? They said, no, you're not the only one. Many of us have noticed it. But because they are not inclined to serving the devotees, because they are somehow or the other not been appreciative of what's been offered to them by Srila Prabhupada or by Acharyas, or in one sense they have not received the mercy of the Lord. That'll make them more appreciative of what's been given. That's why they still have these concocted ideas of what reality is. Then I realized that, okay, so it's the mercy of the Lord which comes through His devotees, through which we can come closer to appreciating them. So, like I said, that in the Vedas you see all these descriptions, and if we are not able to see through them, we'll see that we'll come to the conclusion that the Lord is impersonal. But as much as the Vedas speak about the impersonal attributes, it also speaks at great length about the personal attributes, which is the Lord is omnipotent, He's omniscient, He's the controller of all beings. And the same question that was basically asked, we were in our Sangha gatherings, we were discussing this concept of universal form and, the whole aspect of creation and so on and so forth. And one person asked that, what's the need of knowing all of this? Isn't just chanting Hare Krishna enough? Isn't that the path to Krishna? And he had a point. If there's all of this, if the essence of all Vedic texts is to chant Hare Krishna and be happy, then why go through this whole, I would say, rigorous study of the Shastra? Like, some of us who want to study Shastra diligently, we enroll in Bhakti Shastri and so many other, courses that give us the lens through which we can understand Srila Prabhupada's books. And then the conclusion, so I discussed with the devotee, and I said, this devotee is asking me this, what should I say? And he said that, just think of this, right? Just a brief glance of the Lord on Mahatattva agitates, or Mahamaya, just agitates her to create all these gross and subtle bodies for our sense gratification, and to create this whole paradigm for us to falsely enjoy. How much more potent is this Lord? That just by a brief glance, if this is possible, just imagine what is the Lord in His full totality. And then when I started thinking about it, I said, yeah, that's actually makes sense, because if it's just a brief glance that creates such a complex and intricate system that can bewilder us, how much greater is, the Lord's bigger glance, in a sense, that, what can He do? So, again, these philosophers or people out there who can't adjust to the two-handed form of the Lord, they take refuge in this whole Virat conception, which gets them closer to transcendence. Now, in relation to this, I'd like to narrate Srila Prabhupada's exchanges with his devotees in regards to the philosophy of Aristotle, a famous philosopher who was a student of Plato. And in that, this concept of, to one extent, Aristotle was a speculator. He was speculating on the nature of God. And devotees put forward certain arguments that would state Aristotle's claim, and then Prabhupada would refute it or agree with it as it mirrored Shastra, or that we know. So in Aristotle's worldview, he viewed the whole entire world, or universe, as you may say, he viewed the whole thing as a cosmic hierarchy. At the bottom was pure matter, that's basically has no intelligible essence. And at the top is God, who's pure spirit. He's the unmover, God is the unmover of the whole system. He's unmoved by it. So basically he's pure spirit, has nothing to do with matter at all. So that's where he placed his cosmic hierarchy. And who's in the middle are the plants, minerals, humans, so on and so forth. So as you go from matter all the way up, you get closer to transcendence, God. Now, what I don't know what what Prabhupada's conclusion was. From what I understood was that this Aristotle was speculating that as we get closer to transcendence, we become God. So now, Prabhupada said that, Aristotle, he kind of extended that out to others too, that by speculating, we can know something about God, but our process is that we get the knowledge from God itself. So chapter 7, verse 1, inquire and you may know. And just like Prabhupada said, for example, someone who's in darkness, you can enlighten them all about what's light. And by your explanation, they may come to realize what is light. But it's best experienced when you come out and you experience sunlight. And that's the full realization that there is something, that's actually light, which can dispel this darkness. The other claim that Aristotle made, that man is a combination of matter and spirit. So as you're going up, let's say if at the bottom matter is 100% and top spirit is 100%. So as you're going towards spirit, then as you go up the chain, then you're reducing in matter. So I don't know where did man stand, but man is a combination of matter and spirit. And to which Prabhupada said, no, man is pure spirit, but man is covered by matter. And so Aristotle said man is inherently imperfect. And Prabhupada said, no, he's not inherently imperfect. He is imperfect because he is conditioned by the material energy, which brings about the imperfections in him. If he chooses to change his position, then he can be situated in transcendence. And then Aristotle said nature has a purpose, to which Prabhupada said, yes, these 8.4 million species of life is there for a purpose. We are placed in these bodies based on a karma, and we get our next body based, just like as, we have a set of clothes and we want to get a new set of clothes. We just don't get the new set of clothes based on, some random occurrence. It's the price that we pay that we get those clothes. It's the karma that you accrue, the karma that you have, that's about to be manifested. That through that you get your next set of clothes. Now, the last thing that some of the, as this conversation was heading towards, more, because a lot of these, when you read Prabhupada's dialogues with these, about these philosophers, you read through it and you kind of like waiting, where is Prabhupada's punchline? Where does he really get in on them? And then as I read through this conversation, now where it got to that point where it said, Aristotle said, God is total mind or pure mind or intellect. And then now to some of us who may hear this, will be actually, it may sound quite convincing, or pure spirit is, God is pure spirit, is pure mind or intellect. And Prabhupada said, if God is pure mind or intellect, that means he is a person, because he has a mind or intellect. And the next thing that Aristotle said, that God's activity is in thought. That means God, quote unquote, meditates. And Prabhupada said that's nonsense. God is God. He doesn't have to meditate. You don't see Krishna going around meditating. You see Krishna engaging in his pastime with his devotees. So if God is meditating, that means he's not perfect. And as Aristotle claims that God is really perfect. So he said that's not perfect, because God is actually, the difference between us and God is that if God desires, then that thing manifests. Whereas if we desire, then it takes time for it to fructify. And then Aristotle goes on to say that God has nothing to do with this world, because this world is constantly changing or constantly undergoing transformations. And if he is in touch with that, that means he's also subject to change. That means in one sense, God has nothing to do with this world, to which Prabhupada again refuted that no. Krishna says, Ye yata mam prapadyante tam tataiva bhajamiham. As you surrender unto me, I'll reciprocate with you. So Krishna interacts with his devotees. He reciprocates with their desires. Now their desires may be, as we see, there are 4 kinds of people who approach Krishna, and he rewards them accordingly. So God basically can reciprocate with everyone, but his position is unchanged. He never deviates. There's no, Krishna is not reduced by anything. So then Prabhupada then finally makes his claim that all of the speculation, we can know something about God, but again, God can only be known by revelation. Like how Arjuna, the universal form, that's a revelation. So these other concepts that we come across, that may, for example, someone during the night, we may look at the sky and speculate what's going on up there. And we may come across, or we may come to some conclusions, but that's not complete and perfect. Because as I think 2 days ago, Nityananda Pran Prabhu was saying that we place everything that we experience based on our limited perception of things. And that's, for example, if I were to go to, St. Leonard's Park, and I'd see that there's a fair going on there. And I went there on 2 occasions, and on both occasions there was a fair. So I'll conclude, if anyone asks me, what's there to do at St. Leonard's Park? And I'll say there's only a fair. But is that complete? No, because I need to understand that I've only been there on 2 occasions, and on those 2 occasions there was a fair. So that's how scientists and philosophers, they take a small sample and then they extrapolate that to bigger essence. And that is going on in the world today. Now, just as I was, reading through this, I was quite intrigued by this one part of this purport, where it is said, towards the end, the idea impressed herein is that the Supreme Lord is conscious of every part of his body, and nowhere in his creation is anything beyond his control. What touched me was the Supreme Lord is conscious of every part of his body. And I was thinking of how to relate to it. Obviously everything that Prabhupada writes actually is a message to us, or it has an inherent meaning that we need to see what's there. How is Prabhupada trying to encourage us to go deeper in our understanding of Krishna consciousness? And I was seeing, what does it mean that the Lord is conscious of every part of his body? And as I was I read it a few times and I reflected on it, and I came across His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami's book that he written, Surrender. Surrender unto me or Surrender? I can't remember exactly the title, but it has surrender in it. And it speaks about that how, if we are part and parcels of Krishna, so Krishna is conscious of each and every one of our suffering and pleasure, or pleasure and suffering. And it goes on to say that how are we truly embodying that principle? Are we conscious of everyone's pain and suffering? And I'm not saying this from a mundane point of view from what Bhakti Swami said, but it actually brought to me memories of when I first came across His Holiness Tamal Krishna Maharaj's lecture, which I wouldn't state the title here for reasons, but he was really encouraging devotees to go beyond their own bodily identification, if I may say, to be instruments of change in Lord Chaitanya's mission. And are we truly feeling the question that I asked, or the question that Bhakti Tirtha Swami, he titled his sections, like, are we truly feeling the pain for others? So I'm reminded again of a pastime of Srila Prabhupada that happened in Melbourne. And the pastime unfolds in such a way that Prabhupada is with a devotee. And I think it may have been a disciple in Sydney. I can't remember. The cook? No. He's still here. No, he's still in Sydney. Prabhu. Anyway, I think it'll come. Govinda's, he's got slightly long hair. Dwapayana Prabhu. Now I've heard it from him. I'm not sure if it was he who was in the car. But anyway, as it goes, he was with Prabhupada in the car. And this car stopped at some busy intersection. And as it stopped, all they could see were people just, running to this train station, running, to get to their place of work. And they just seemed so oblivious that they were actually really being roped by this mode of passion. They were just constantly doing it. And then at that very moment, Vapayana Prabhu said within himself, he felt a sense of ease that, how he's so fortunate to be in the presence of a spiritual master. Again, I'm not sure if it is Vapayana Prabhu, but this is the pastime that he related. And then he said, and that as he felt that slight bit of pride, or the slight bit of joy that he could, that he felt in presence of Srila Prabhupada, he just turned back and saw Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Prabhupada had tears coming through their eyes. And he said that Srila Prabhupada then asked, who will save them? And at that moment he understood Srila Prabhupada's compassion, that what he was seeing was that people struggling, and this Prabhu being, at the, as you may say, being on the fortunate side where he's gotten the mercy of Srila Prabhupada and realized how life has, given him a chance to, connect to Krishna. And as he was seeing this, he realized Prabhupada's compassion. And it is said, Bhakti Swami writes in his book, that when we see others in pain, what do we feel? And then he says, a lot of times, and when I was reading that purport, when I was reading that section, it just touched me such that when I saw that when I see others in pain, even though I may offer words of solace, I may offer words that are soothing to them, but in some corner of my heart, I'm harboring on this, that I'm glad this didn't happen to me. I'm really, really lucky that I missed this, pain or suffering that I somehow was able to dodge. So somehow the other Krishna was able to, through him, I was able to dodge the suffering. And the moment I have this, until I'm harboring with this mentality, I won't be able to understand what's true compassion, because I see it someone suffering, and Bhakti Swami writes that spiritual consciousness means becoming attentive to the inner reality that's conditioned, or that's basically gripping these people. So people may say that they're happy, but am I able to see through them and see, are they truly happy? Am I really, really willing to sacrifice myself to bring that person's consciousness to the level of what will actually allow them to taste true happiness? Am I willing to make that sacrifice? And just a few weeks ago, I was hearing this podcast by this devotee at the Bhakti Center, Jai Jagannath Prabhu, very amazing devotee, and he was saying that how in previous ages they would, you have in each yuga there is a different sacrifices, yagya by performing, the fire sacrifices. Yaga is basically performing temple worship. Yaga by meditating for so many thousands of years. In this Kali Yuga, the sacrifice is chanting of the holy names. But what is it that we are sacrificing? He was asking that question, and then it's a sacrifice. What is it we are sacrificing? He said we actually have to sacrifice a false ego that we are the doers, and even though we are devotees, we have gotten this good fortune. Are we the only ones that are entitled to this? Or are we going to extend this sense of, this whole mercy of good fortune to the others? And it really, as I was saying, as the Lord is conscious of every part of His body, given the current situation we are in this world, I asked myself, am I causing pain to others? Because inherently, somewhere or the other, if I'm in this bigger scheme of things, it seems that each one of us has a part to play. So what is it that what's my dharma, per se? Then I asked myself the question, am I causing pain to other living entities? Am I somehow or the other, and I'll get to what I'm getting to, because this clearly mirrors what, for what Lord Jagannath is known as the Lord of the universe. When I ask, am I causing pain, what is it that am I doing? When I say pain to the people outside, or to the devotees in the community. Now when Radha Gopinath, when they first came to Sydney, Prabhupada had this prayer to them, submitted this prayer to them, that I'm leaving you in the hands of Mlechas and Yavanas, and so on and so forth. You please take care of them. What it meant is that all backgrounds of people are going to come to Shri Radha Gopinath, and Radha Gopinath is so merciful that they're going to engage all of them. So, am I doing my part? Am I really doing what Prabhupada wants us to do, or the Acharyas wants us to do? Am I doing that? Am I educated enough in the cultural sensitivities of all these backgrounds that I'm able to encourage or inspire them? Take it in another way. A lot of times, I ask myself that when I come to the temple and I have, prasadam, which is actually nothing but the mercy of the Lord, and it's happened, I pack prasadam, not for myself, but I pack prasadam for the whole week. So I have enough, and tomorrow's lunch, breakfast, dinner, and so on and so forth. I plan my week. But I ask myself, have I ever thought, what if I can give this to someone who's never had prasad? And I may say, oh, but I don't see anyone who wants prasad. Well, we know in bhakti, if we meditate on something and actually doing whatever we're meditating on, the result is the same. So, if we have that sincere desire to be instruments of change, then Radha Gopinath will empower us to do what's needed. And then a lot of times when I'm doing this, if I'm doing a particular service, am I seeing myself as holding a sense of entitlement to that service? Am I seeing that this service is only meant for my glory? Or am I seeing that, okay, is it something, is there by any way I can inspire someone to do this service? And I'll give you a mundane example. A few years ago, when I was working at this company, I had a manager, and this manager had, to this date, I have a lot of respect and appreciation for him because he had this model. And what was his model? He would basically give us work. He would give us whatever projects we were working on. And then what he'd do is, okay, you do this work, and as soon as you're done, I'm going to give you this project that I'm working on, and I'm going to go and ask for more work. He wasn't attached to those projects that he was working on. In a sense, he was giving them to us, for us. He said, because I want each and one of you to take the credit. I'm doing this service for now. I'm bringing it to a point where I can hand it over to you. From you now, you take it on, and when you excel in it, then you move on to something else. So, when I first joined, when I first came in touch with devotees, on this one Sunday feast, this Mataji was, I think there was Janmashtami that was going to happen in the next few weeks. So she was recruiting for volunteers, and then she, got up on the mic and said, "There's 100% employment in Krishna's service. You'll never be unemployed." That means that you'll always have some service. So when I read this, when I'm causing pain or when I'm being an obstacle, am I doing enough for Prabhupada's mission? And then I'll get to what it, for instance, as we see here, Lord Jagannath is the Lord of the universe. Yesterday when when we see this beautiful display of Jagannath Puri, the realization that I had, I really need to start reading the Chaitanya Charitamrita more deeply. Because all of this, these are actually Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. So when we see the brilliance of devotees, when we see how wonderfully they engaged in inspiring others, we should in turn feel inspired and do more. For example, just last week, I was hearing this class by this one Prabhu, that how in the spiritual world, the boys actually run very fast to touch Krishna's feet. But they are running fast to inspire the other devotee to run even faster to get to Krishna's feet. And he said that the difference is that in the material world, we'll run fast and just, stick our hand out so the other person doesn't come in. But in the spiritual world, it's the opposite. I'm running fast, I'm doing whatever service I can do to inspire the other devotee or to inspire the other person to do even better. So, what I came to in this conclusion is, am I causing pain? Yes. Where are the areas that I'm causing pain? Where am I being an obstacle to Lord Chaitanya's movement or his mission? And if I'm willing to change, then am I changing at a pace that's fast enough, or am I doing that's whatever is enough? As long as we cultivate that mentality that whatever I'm doing is not enough, I need to do more, then that brings us even closer to Krishna. A few years ago, I was hearing Vaisheshwar Prabhu recall this conversation he had with the top book distributor, I think in Europe. And he said that he asked this devotee, because this devotee was just constantly distributing books day in, day out, and huge numbers. And he asked this Prabhu, what keeps you going day in and day out? And he said, what keeps me going is Krishna's promise in the Bhagavad Gita, which is 18.68 and 69. One who shares this knowledge with others, for him pure devotion service is guaranteed, and there's no one more dear to me than him. So, if we want to get closer to Krishna, then we have to let go, or we have to, I wouldn't say let go, but we have to somehow or the other find ways or be ready to make that sacrifice that'll please Shri Radha Gopinath and bring us closer to them. And just last week I heard this, there was this talk, there's a podcast that was going on in the US with some devotees, and this one devotee made an interesting statement, a realization, that he said that you cannot get Krishna as being a part-time devotee. Now, what does this mean, part-time devotee? It means that he said, you have to surrender to Krishna. It's Krishna, our Vaishnava behavior, our Vaishnava, we exhibit the mercy, or we become those bearers of change, instruments of change, by accepting that each one of us has this responsibility of pleasing Srila Prabhupada. That means we do what we can do in its totality, which is on one end we say, yes, we have to give Krishna to others, but on the other hand, we try and see what's in it for us. And as long as we have that sort of consciousness, then we won't. And it may not be, it's actually quite subtle in a sense, that because we always think of ourselves first and then others, or giving that mercy to others, which there are certain circumstances in which that happens, but on a whole, are you willing to give Krishna to others? And if that means, then we have to accept that no matter what Krishna asks us to do, we will do it, and we'll do it in a way that'll make others more dear to Krishna. Okay. So now, because yesterday was Jagannath Puri Rath Yatra, and we see how Lord Jagannath, Lord of the universe, what it meant for me, and as I was reading through this, is I really haven't done enough to bring whoever I can closer to Jagannath. So that means that there's a lot of work to do. And if each one of us thinks in that, with that mindset, that we need to do more to bring others to the lotus feet of Lord Jagannath, and in that way, Lord Jagannath's glory will be fully manifested. That's who we are referring to as the Lord of the universe. Okay, I've gone over time, so no time for questions or comments. Thank you all. Granth Raj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki. Srila Prabhupada ki.